The Giants' series win against the Colorado Rockies, taking 3 out of 4, just meant more, and here's why.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there on video if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And coming up on today's show, we're going to get into why this series win, and I emphasize taking 3 out of 4, just meant more. There are a number of reasons. The fact that they lost the first game, the fact that they're headed out on a tough road trip, the fact that Willy Adames broke through, and then we'll also get into Kyle Harrison being added to the Major League roster and the corresponding roster move that got him on. So breaking down first the meaning here for me of taking 3 out of 4. Yes, it's the Colorado Rockies. You might think they're supposed to take 3 out of 4. And you're right. They are supposed to take 3 out of 4. But it's never easy to do. A 4-game series is tough. Like winning 75% of your games is never easy, no matter who the opponent is. And like, for example, if we take 75% and multiply that by 162 games, that's 121 and a half wins. And so if you played the Rockies every game all season long, would you really win 121, 122 games? Maybe, I guess, but that's tough to do, like in baseball, to win that many games, even if it's the Rockies. And so it's especially tough in a 4-game series when you lose the first one. And that's what we saw. And that was on Thursday. So we had an episode on Friday talking about how difficult it was going to be to win 3 out of 4, and that they would have to win all 3 of their remaining games. And that's exactly what they did. So that's the number one thing, is that it's a huge morale boost when you're able to do what you're supposed to do despite the adversity of losing that first game 4-3. It was like a close game, and they had a late lead. Tyler Rogers gave up a couple runs late, and I was critical of the offense because, the bullpen can't be perfect all the time. Well, what did the offense do the rest of the way? They scored. Well, they won 4-0 on Friday, so that just goes to show you pitching is a big factor as well. If you can shut out a team, that's obviously, you're going to win every one of those games. And then 6-3 on Saturday, and then 9-3 on Sunday, with Willy Adames breaking out. And we'll get into the Adames breakout a little bit later on. So you take this momentum, and I think it was Dwayne Kuiper said it best on the post-game show, that maybe it was Mike Krukow, one of the two, that you just, when you do this, you forget about those 2 games in San Diego. I totally did. I wasn't thinking about them at all, where they went to San Diego and lost both. So they had lost 3 straight, 2 in San Diego, and then the first game against the Rockies. And that was the first time all year that the Giants had lost 3 straight games. So that's obviously good that you had gone over a month into the season without losing 3 straight games. But then to bounce back immediately with 3 straight wins, yes, it's the Rockies. No, it is just not that easy to rattle off 3 straight wins, no matter who the team is. Going into Chicago, where you're going to face the Cubs, who have just been fantastic, especially when it comes to run scoring. So the Cubs are 21-14, Giants are 22-13. So the Giants come in with a better winning percentage than the Cubs, but the Cubs are the home team. They are only 9-7 at home, but they're playing great. I mean, you just look at the runs scored, and so they've played 35 games. Giants have also played 35 games. Giants have scored 164 runs, and that's a solid total when you look at runs per game. We've talked a lot about the offense, but runs per game, they've actually done pretty well. It's like the underlying stuff where it's like they're only getting that many runs per game because they've been really good in high leverage situations. And okay, so 164 runs for the Giants. Well, how about this for the Cubs? 208 runs scored. As I browse through the rest of the league, no other team has scored 200 runs. Like, there are some teams that are in 187 for the Yankees, seems to be the second highest. Dodgers have 182. Well, the Cubs have 208 runs scored. So this team, 208 runs. Last I looked, they were averaging 6 runs per game. I know they got shut out in yesterday, so hopefully the Brewers shutting them out is a sign of them maybe cooling off. But 208 divided by 35 is 5.94 runs per game. So that is a lot. That is a lot. And you've got Landon Roop going today against Matthew Boyd, former Giant, forever Giant. I always like to joke because it seems like we call anyone who wore a Giants uniform a forever Giant. And then Justin Verlander in the second game. We'll break down the other pitching matchups later, but you don't have Logan Webb going in this series. So this is a big series, and that's why it was just a huge, huge momentum swing for the Giants to win these final 3 games against the Rockies after dropping the first one in tough fashion, and that immediately had followed losing 2 in San Diego. So anyway, Giants end up feeling great about themselves, and then they've got a long flight to Chicago, and they're feeling good. They're probably watching the Warriors win and feeling good about that too in a Game 7, and then you look at the standings, and the 2 best teams in baseball are ahead of the Giants in the National League West. The Dodgers and the Padres. It is a little early to be scoreboard watching, but it is also a little frustrating. The Giants' .629 winning percentage would be tied for the best in the American League, and yet they've got 2 teams in their division with a better winning percentage. Actually, Giants are also tied with the Mets. So the Mets and Giants and Tigers are tied for the 3rd best record in baseball. So any way you look at it, the Giants, they've faced some adversity here and there, but they've been able to bounce back, and winning 3 out of 4 after dropping the first one is just the latest example of that. And it's just not going to get easy as you head to Chicago. I'm looking at the weather in Chicago. It's going to be cold. Got a high of 57, low of 47. So it's not going to get too cold, I guess. Although playing in the 40s is uncomfortable. It looks like there's not too much wind. It warms up tomorrow, but today it's going to be a cold one. And so we'll see if that can suppress the Cubs' really hot offense. Although the Giants' offense is heating up with 9 runs scored in their most recent game, and one of their most important players finally heating up. Willy Adames joins the party. We'll break down what he was able to do and what he's been able to do for a little while now, and how important he is to this team in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. To me, the most important and best feature is just that instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals all in one easy-to-use app and website. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, as promised, we are going to get into one Mr. Willy Adames, who's just obviously so important to the San Francisco Giants. They didn't sign him to a $182 million contract to be bad. They didn't sign him to a $182 million contract to not be a critical player for them. And somehow, despite Adames being bad basically until the last week or so, overall, they've still managed to win. And so it kind of reminds me of the Warriors game from last night. If you watched it, like the Warriors had a lead when Steph Curry for a long time had no points, it's like, well, that's a good sign because eventually Steph Curry's going to Steph Curry. And eventually, I've said this before, actually, eventually Willy Adames is going to Willy Adames. And look, he's not like a superstar with the bat. Like he's above average in his career, but he's not like 50% above average. He's solidly above average, but that's generous. Maybe like 10% above average. But then you combine that with the fact that he's an athletic 29-year-old shortstop, and that's where all the value comes in. And then what he brings personality-wise as well. Well, in one game, like we had been talking and I had been looking even on my own and shedding a tear at Willy Adames being like in the negatives in Fangraphs wins above replacement the whole season, basically since day one. And he had struggled on both sides of the ball. And a small sample of like the most recent couple of games that I can remember, maybe specifically just Sunday, he was solid defensively, like more than solid, made some nice plays, made some difficult plays, made the routine plays, and then broke out with the bat. Thanks again, by the way, for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down this great matchup, Giants versus Cubs, two surprisingly really good teams to start the season. Game one of the series, we'll be breaking it down tomorrow, so come back for that. But Willy Adames goes yard in his first at bat. You know what? Honestly, I could see it coming. He worked a 10-pitch at bat. Oftentimes, the longer an at bat goes, the more success a hitter seems to have. And the second to last pitch against him, he kind of popped it up, and I was like, "Oh no!" But it went foul. It went out of play, foul, and I just had a feeling that the next pitch he was going to go yard, and he did. So hits a bomb off Germán Marquez in the first inning, and then in his second at bat, also against Marquez, it was still 1-0. He was the only offense for the Giants, and he did it again. And this one was even more of a no-doubter. And then in his third at bat, he very nearly hit another home run just to the right of center field. And Sarah Langs, I think it was, on Twitter, noted that StatCast said the wind pushed that ball like 6 feet in and like 4 feet to the right or something. And so she says that the wind kept that ball actually from going out of the ballpark. That the StatCast is able to read that kind of stuff now. And so he was so close to hitting 3 home runs in his first 3 at-bats of this game. And we have discussed over and over how if you just kind of look at, you can see like on Fangraphs, a graph of Willy Adames's kind of the peaks and valleys of his offense. And he had like, even last year, in a year when he was 19% better than average offensively by measure of weighted runs created plus, hit 32 home runs, drove in 112. Even last year, he had a valley, like a slump, that was even lower than any point he's been this season. And yet, then when he got hot, he basically sustained that from July, from maybe the All-Star break. He cooled off to around average in late August, but then he was scorching hot basically through the end of the season. So he sustained his hot streak for like 2.5 months. And so that's what I think he can do, is that he appears to be a streaky hitter. There's certain players on the Giants we've seen over the years who have been the same way. I don't want to say Brandon Belt because those slumps were just so long, and then the hot streaks were so hot. So maybe that is a good comparison. But a lot of times in baseball, that is what happens. Guys get cold, guys get hot. And I have mentioned how we had never seen good Willy Adames. And so when you see a guy slump like Matt Chapman or whatever, you don't worry as much because we've seen good Matt Chapman. And so we know what's in the tank and what it looks like when he's good and that he's capable of it. But when it's a new player to your team, you can look at the numbers all you want, like last season and how good he was. But if you haven't seen it with your own eyes, it makes you a little more skeptical of the ability. So when you start to see it, it's just, it relaxes you as a fan. And I think as a player coming to a new organization and trying to justify a $182 million contract, he admitted in the post-game show, like in an interview right after the game, that he was trying to do too much. And it's just human nature, I think, to try to, he said he was trying to force things. And he still looks that way sometimes. Sometimes there's just big chases out of the zone on like sliders away specifically or down and away. But for the most part, he's actually been pretty good at not chasing. And his walk rate is 11%, which is better than league average. His strikeout rate is better. It's not better than league average, but it's better than his career average. So he's actually striking out less than normal by his own standards. He's also making contact on pitches in the strike zone more often than he normally does in his career as well. So when I break it down by numbers, there's just two little things that jump out to me. Number one, the batting average on balls in play is now just a little bit lower than his career. Well, it's about 20, more than 20. It's like 25, 28 points below where it is in his career. He's at 306 for his career batting average on balls in play. And this year it's just 278. And then more importantly to me is the isolated power, which is kind of a measure of how many extra base hits you're getting per at bat. It's slugging percentage minus batting average, because batting average can drive up slugging percentage. If you have a 400 average with all singles, you're going to have a 400 slugging. If you have a 100 average with a 400 slugging, you've hit for a lot more power, even though the slugging is identical to the other guy who hit nothing but singles. So for Adames, the isolated power is just 133, even after the 2-homer game. In his career, going back to ever since he was a full-time player, it's never been below 164. And in his career, it's at 193. So he's got about 60 points to go there. So the extra base hits were what was missing for the most part. And starting to see some pull side homers. I mean, those were the first 2 homers that he pulled all season long. And all of a sudden, the batting line is just a little bit below average. It's a 230 average, a 312 on base, and 363 slugging. Adjusting for Oracle Park, it's been about 8% below average, whereas in his career, he's been about 9% above average. So it's not that far off. That's what a good game like that can do for you. And actually, the expected numbers for him are about 23 points higher when it comes to weighted on base average. So we've seen it, like he's hit some balls hard that found gloves. And if those balls had fallen and then you add in yesterday's game, all of a sudden you probably are looking at Willy Adames just getting to his numbers. And so at the end of the day, guys tend to get to their numbers, and he, with that one game, and really it's been more than just the one game, he's been playing better lately. Like if we look at since the 27th of April, that's the 27th, 29th, the 30th, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, he's hit 348 with a 483 on base percentage. That's a 20.7% walk rate. And 826 slugging. That's a 478 isolated power. So imagine if those were the first, what is that, 7 games. Imagine if those were the first 7 games of the season. Like, it's just, you go up, you go down. And it just, you can start cold, or you can start hot, or you can start cold and then get hot, or you can start hot and then get cold. And it can really skew your perception. So it's like, Adames has really struggled all year, but what if he started hot and then struggled? Like, it's a big picture game. And so I breathe a sigh of relief. I think he breathes a sigh of relief. And I think the fan base breathes a sigh of relief as their $182 million player busts through offensively. And to do it going into Chicago, a place where he's very familiar as a longtime Brewer. I guess he wasn't with Milwaukee that long, like 4.5 years. But he's very familiar with Wrigley Field. I would venture to guess he's probably done well there because opponents, like I've talked to other Locked On hosts about Willy Adames, and they're like, I'm just glad he's out of the division because he's been a difference maker. The one thing is that the defense is like, I want to see him turn it around and eliminate some of these bad plays. He's made some bad throws. He's just bobbled some balls, like not been able to handle some balls. And you add it up, and it's the defensive runs saved is at -6. The outs above average is at -5. And those are high, low numbers. And then you add it with last year, he was at -16 defensive runs saved. It looked like a blip. The previous 2 years combined +17. So I don't know what to make of that, but from what I've seen, he's made some really athletic and good plays, and he has a really strong arm, and he's also made some bad plays. So I've seen overall below average defense from him. So if I really want to see him turn that around, it seems like he doesn't get that many routine plays. So maybe that will help, and maybe he has had a high number of difficult plays and he's not converted a lot of them, and that has led to these numbers. I don't know. My understanding of these kinds of numbers, defensive runs saved, outs above average, it kind of is a bigger sample thing. Like, you can't really just look at 35 games and then say, okay, we can draw conclusions. You need a bigger sample. But then you combine it with last year and the -16 defensive runs saved, and then already whatever I said, -6 this year. It starts to concern you a little bit, especially when you're talking about a guy who you signed for 7 years, $182 million. But I believe I need to see more, but the bat coming around is a huge deal in and of itself. So turning the page, the Giants made their most significant roster move of the season. And really, I think, besides like signing players like Willy Adames, their most significant roster move like in season under Buster Posey by far yesterday. So we'll get into what it was momentarily and before we do. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's upwork.com, upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the most significant roster move that the Giants have made under Farhan Zaidi, under Buster Posey. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers will be breaking down an early season kind of postseason feel type matchup with the Cubs and the Giants going at it in Wrigley Field. It's a big test for the Giants. They've played some good teams, but you look at, a team that you haven't faced yet, and it's a team in another division that's also playing really well. It's a really good matchup. And Landon Roop, the underlying numbers have been so much better than the ERA. So we'll see if in the cold weather at Wrigley, which can make a big difference, if it's like, the wind makes a huge difference there. And I don't know if the wind's blowing in or out. It looks like mild winds from what I can tell now. But anyway, that the wind plays a huge role in that field, and we'll see what happens. And the Giants facing a lefty, it's worth pointing out. But how about Luis Matos? Just by the way, little side note, he's been hot. Although Bob Melvin noted that he has historical reverse splits. I didn't notice that ever about Matos. I'll have to dig deeper into that. But Giants have not done well against lefties, and they're facing a lefty tonight. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyway, the most significant roster move to date, and it does bring some excitement along with it. So the thing that was the most significant to me was that they DFA'd someone on the active roster. So far, 35 games into the season, they had not DFA'd anybody. Under Farhan Zaidi, they probably would have DFA'd like 8 players by now. And definitely you would have seen more than just the roster move to put Casey Schmidt on the IL and call up David VR. Didn't they do another one? I'm forgetting if there was another roster move besides that. But this one, they DFA Lou Trevino. After he pitched in the ninth, I think maybe, I always wonder in these situations, did he know that he was going to be DFA'd after the game? Or is that not the kind of thing? Because maybe it was a little showcase for other teams to try to do him a solid, like, hey, look, he can still pitch a little bit. So Lou Trevino, it never really made sense to me that he made the team. I think that they had a lot of good options that weren't Lou Trevino, so no offense to him, but he sure enough went out there and wasn't great with the Giants. And they didn't just call up like a reliever, like, I don't know, Sean Jelly or something. They went and they called up the guy who's been, like, literally in our last episode, we said Kyle Harrison back on the radar. So Kyle Harrison is not only back on the radar, he's back on the roster. They call up former top prospect, young lefty, just 23 years old, Kyle Harrison, who, as I noted on Friday, he's never in his pro career, even in the minor leagues, pitched out of the bullpen. He's only started. And Alex Pavlovich said of this move on Twitter, Giants' plan is to have Kyle Harrison in their bullpen. Velocity has gotten better and better in recent weeks, and he had 38 strikeouts in 26 innings in AAA. Also gives them some needed coverage as they head back out on the road. So under Farhan Zaidi, I would have thought, okay, Harrison's going to be here. He'll maybe pitch in a game, and then they'll send him down. But With Buster Posey, I think it's more of a, I don't want to say permanent move, but like it's kind of like another Hayden Birdsong where you've got a guy who's very capable of being a starter, and Harrison like has been super good down in AAA, which is a tough place to pitch, but the numbers look good even by like major league standards, meaning like the league average is much worse there for ERAs and stuff, but his ERA would be good even in the majors. I get it. It's a easier level, but the average is, you understand what I'm saying. And then he was throwing like 97, 98, which is a big deal because when he was starting last year, he was more like 92, 93. So it's also a way, like I've kind of come around a little bit on with Birdsong and with Harrison, you're conserving, you're like saving bullets, for lack of a better word, by not just having them like start the season in the rotation and like expecting them to throw close to 200 innings. Like that's asking a lot of these 23-year-old or so arms. Harrison and Birdsong are like the same age, both 23 years old and 7 months, I should say. Both born in August and are 23, August 2021, both of them. And they're both in the bullpen, and that just adds a dynamic lefty arm. We've seen how dynamic Hayden Birdsong can be out of that bullpen, multiple innings. It's an interesting strategy, and you've just suddenly got another guy who can be like Birdsong potentially. And it does not mean that these are long-term relievers. I think quite the opposite. They're still very much in the picture as long-term starters. It's just that you do kind of have, Robbie Ray is pitching really well. They've won every game that he started. His ERA is 3.05. Justin Verlander, I do not see, unless he just collapses, in which case maybe they would cut him or something, or trade him back to the Astros or something, even though he has a no trade clause. We've discussed this over and over, how, I briefly want to say Jordan Hicks gets a lot of heat, but everything but the ERA looks good. Like the expected ERA, the fielding independent pitching, the stuff quality has been off the charts. Like, I believe in Jordan Hicks based on all the peripheral stuff I'm seeing. So there was, Bob Melvin was asked after when Jordan Hicks made his start, he pitched extremely well, I thought. And then he gave up a couple runners and the bullpen came in and those runners scored. So the final line didn't end up looking great with the runs scored, and his ERA is 6.03. But I still really am intrigued by what I've seen from Jordan Hicks if you look at all the underlying stuff. And so I'm okay with them letting Hayden Birdsong and Kyle Harrison kind of pitch out of the bullpen for now, yet be a part of that long-term plan. And even later this season, like if Birdsong and or Harrison are just dominating in the bullpen, gives you options to potentially trade, not them, but maybe a Jordan Hicks. I don't know. Trade somebody, Robbie Ray. I don't know what they're going to do. Injuries happen too, or maybe guys just need a break. So we'll see. But all I know is that they've got suddenly another like electric young talent in their bullpen. And we've seen Birdsong make a difference. And now I think there's another guy who can make a difference, and that's Kyle Harrison. And yeah, DFAing a veteran, we now see that Buster Posey has it in him to do it. And I think you improve by bringing up, we're learning about Buster Posey, and this move to say, hey, his velocity's just gone way up. Like he's young and like super talented. We need to get him on the roster. So I was happy to see that, even though I never root for someone to be DFA'd. I think it improves the team for sure. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.